What? Hey, my name is Kenton and I am the co-host of the BeckDeck podcast, joined alongside Logan Decker. Logan, it's Sunday. We are in the house. We're about to start a ripping pod. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. Doing good. Work week was long, but the weekend was fantastic. We both have had some good news come along the way. So more than happy to share with the audience is that me and my wife are expecting our first child, and we had the gender reveal this weekend. And the vast majority of people thought it was a girl, including myself. My wife thought it was a boy, and what we did was we had an exploding golf ball. And I tried my best not to top this thing. It's probably one of the best hits of my life in terms of form, and we are having a boy. So we are very excited about that. Blessed. We're just hoping for a healthy baby, but I had no preference. That's all I cared about. But part of me's like, yes, it's a boy. I'm not going to lie there.
You didn't pull a Gordon Hayward, that video of him where he gets a daughter in his gender reveal, and he just looks so incredibly happy about it.
In his defense, I think he probably already had like 3 girls at that point.
Right.
Some people are just, it is what it is. It's like you're only destined to have one gender. And hey, I won't know that until if and when we have a second one. But hey, we got a boy. Yay. Everything's looking good so far with all the tests and whatnot. So we are super excited. We have not settled on any name yet. We have a couple ideas. Maybe we'll share that in the future pods, but that's still in the works.
Well, I can't wait to welcome baby Mick Brexton into the world. I think that'll be a great name for your son, and he'll be the next lacrosse superstar at Bucknell University. And for me, of equal, if not more significant importance to people's lives, I figured out my car situation. I was able to secure another Acura TL. It was better taken care of than the first time I bought one back in 2021. It was a great find, and car hack out there for anybody. And just to preface this, used car shopping sucks. I don't need to go on that rant again, so it's really good to have that finished. But it seems to me that besides the mileage hack that I like to follow, the other key hack to do is find a car that was owned and maintained by an older couple or an older person, because they seem to take a lot better care of their stuff. This car was in great condition. They put new tires on it, new brakes. I don't think a new battery, but it has the oil updated, all of the fluids updated, new windshield wipers. It's really clean. They did a great job. They sold it about 2 years ago, and it's just been maintained since then. So I was very blessed to get this car. I can finally go back to the gym and live and resume my normal life, which is always really nice. And I'm very familiar with the car because my last car was an Acura TL, so I essentially got the same car in black with the cream exterior. So I gotta eat less Gold Star and Chipotle in my lap in my front seat, but other than that, I think it'll be good for the next couple of years.
No, it is exciting, man, and I completely agree with you on the generational stuff. We talked before on this, but that's how I bought my Honda Civic years ago. Is that those cars? I'd say that's probably the last vestige of a gem buried in the rough in terms of the used car market. So if you can get lucky enough to find that, kudos to you, because those type of vehicles don't stay on the market long. So you must have had some good timing, probably like me. It was probably in the lot within a week, and you were just the first person to actually walk in and be like, I'm serious about it.
I think I was the only person in quite some time to bring it up.
Really?
I don't know how long it had been sitting on this lot, but I think because I know about this specific type of car, I don't think a lot of people are like looking for it per se. So maybe with a car that's like 110 to 150K miles, they might prefer a Honda Civic because it's probably a bigger brand name, and also a Toyota Camry or a Toyota Corolla. So if somebody's going and looking for those specific specifications for a sedan, that's probably what they're going to go to. Or maybe they have a preference for an Infiniti, or maybe BMW, something like that on the secondary market. Because I think because I knew about this car and how they're like low-key underrated, I was able to find a diamond in the rough, essentially. And it seems like one of my questions I had when I was buying the car is that why was a car in such good condition just like sitting there for so long? Now, I hope I don't find out later on, but I bought it from a dealership and I trust these guys. I think the salesman was good. So and from everything that I've read on the Carfax and the just eye test, driving it around, it drives great. So I think with all of that, I think it's just a case of slipping through the cracks, finding a gem. And you're totally right. I don't know how much longer we're going to be able to find these kind of gems in the used car market because of what we talked about last week and how over-leveraged it feels like that market is. Also, because my car that I'm getting is a 2009, I think going forward, a lot of these cars have, I mean, this could just be an ignorant statement, so if car people are pushing back on it, that's fine. But with the technology they're putting into some of these cars and the chips and the computers and all of that, I think, and the maintenance required and these like certain, maintenance deals. I know if you get a Tesla, they only want you to take it to a Tesla dealership and maintenance it, even though you might be able to find parts or a good deal on a car on Facebook, whatever. I think it's going to be a lot harder to find, cars that have Bluetooth and good technology and stuff, but aren't so technologically, integrated. Whatever. It doesn't have so much tech in it that it's going to be hard to repair on your own or at a casual dealer. So maybe that's incorrect, but I think that's kind of the way I see it because a lot of these newer cars don't even feel like cars anymore.
Yeah, the newer vehicles are definitely built for you to try to come back into their specific dealerships and whatnot. The older cars definitely have anybody can work on them to that degree. Completely understand that. Been there with that. That being said, I wanted to dive into our first topic today, and it's something that I saw on X on Twitter earlier this week, and it was an interesting question. I saw it originally from Brett Krollman, who, if you're into any type of football analytic world, he's a very big part of that. I believe he works with the Los Angeles Chargers, but he's a big social media presence for, let's just say, football nerds. And he interacted with this conversation and basically said, hey, with Patrick Mahomes, this is his, you could say, second large knee injury that he's had in his career. And the proposition was, what if he doesn't return to his Superman form, his Super Saiyan form, and where does he place kind of in the all-time quarterback conversation? So prior to, let's say, this injury or the past few years, it seems like he was on this just skyrocketing projection of where people were like, he's already better than Tom Brady. Like, he was already there, and at that point, he had only been in this, the NFL for like 5 years at this point. Obviously, a few years have passed since his meteoric rise. Just looking at his stats overall, 95-31 record. I believe this is just regular season. 66 passing percentage. Just had under 36,000 passing yards. 267 touchdowns. 85 interceptions. He's had obviously one of the storybook careers to this point. Many NFL quarterbacks would take in the route that he has taken. And, it got me thinking about this just because, hey, let me pull up. I did a deep dive on his stats, went year by year. The past 2 years, and I know last season he played about 14 games. He got injured. So that one's a little bit of a knock on the stats itself. But the past 2 years, he hasn't thrown for over 4,000 yards. The year before that, in 23, he barely got over 4,000 yards. And prior to that, 22 that was the big year, or one of the bigger years that he's had, 52,000 yards, 41 touchdowns. And prior to that, he had been hovering in the high 30s touchdowns, high 4,000 yards. Of course, his full season as the starter, that was his coming out party, over 5,000 yards passing, 50 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. That was the Mahomes marker for being on there. And, of course, that was the MVP year, Pro Bowl, All-Pro. But it seems like, at least in terms of the situation where, hey, the Kansas City Chiefs that were the roster that was there 5 years ago, most of those guys are long gone. Okay, you could talk, let's just say on offensive side of things, they've had a rotation of different linemen at this point. They really haven't had the solid piece, a stable hold like they've had. Obviously, Tyreek Hill has been a massive weapon for the start of his career, and ever since he's left, I feel like they have really struggled to find that true number one. Travis Kelce is getting older. Many people, including myself, and I believe yourself as well, really question whether he was going to retire this past season. Apparently he's going to come back one more. I would imagine that will probably be his last season. His head coach, Andy Reid, who's a phenomenal head coach, is going to go to the Hall of Fame, is currently the oldest active head coach in the NFL, and he's 68 years old. To put that in perspective, Pete Carroll, who coached last year, halfway through the season with the Raiders, was the oldest, and he was 71. So how many years does Andy Reid have left? Kansas City is trying to retool this entire team, and to be quite frank, the past few off seasons haven't been kind to them. They've had to let more players go, and then they haven't been great drafting, so they're kind of having a talent drain. You know, how does he... So this is a Kansas City conversation, and this has just as much impact on Patrick Mahomes as his knee does. But what is your thoughts, just initially, on this question that's being proposed, and the fact that, hey, the circumstance, I mean, obviously he has every potential to come back and be the player that he was. He just hasn't had the pieces that he's needed for years. So what's your thoughts on the question? And then we'll kind of dive into where maybe we'll compare some all-time quarterbacks to be like, hey, if he just keeps the accolades the same, and obviously he's going to play for a long time still, but where does he rank among those? So just the question first.
So the question is, where does he rank?
So I'd say the question is, what do you think about the Mahomes situation itself? Like, him bouncing back, and just, do you think that we've seen potentially the last of this MVP type Mahomes? How worried are you about with his knee injury, and also where the organization is at this moment?
In regards to Mahomes specifically, I think that he still can be an MVP caliber player. And I think he can be an MVP caliber player even coming back from this knee injury, because it seems to be easier than ever to come back from a knee injury. Not that it's easy, I just think the medical science and the rehab programs have gotten to a point to where it helps players get back and be more athletic a lot quicker than maybe 20, 30 years ago. But I think Mahomes can still return to an MVP caliber player because he will be asked to be more efficient and asked to do more kind of less Herculean stuff, but still perform to an efficiency level that will put him in that conversation. Now, I think the Patrick Mahomes we all think of as this like splashing, amazing, massive arm talent player, I still think that's actually in him. He's just not being asked to do that, and he does not have the weapons around him to be able to pull that off again, because I believe Tyreek Hill was a once-in-a-generation player, and if you pair him with Travis Kelce, who is a once-in-a-generation player, you have two hyper-athletic, essentially unicorn players. Three, if you count Mahomes, but all three of those guys are unicorns in the same offense with Andy Reid, and that's how he was able to get 50 touchdowns to 12 picks and burst onto the scene after playing only one game the year prior. So he won the MVP in his second year. We haven't really seen that guy in 3 years. He has won 2 MVPs, I believe. It was 2022 and 2018. And then the rest of his seasons have all been like pretty good. Even last year, which was arguably his worst season, he still had 22 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. Granted, he was hurt, and missed the rest of the season. He only played in, I believe, 14 games. So there was a couple games that he missed there, but they weren't very good, and they were out of playoff contention, or at the very least being ready to be eliminated from playoff contention. I think Mahomes is still one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, although I think the default answer of who is the best quarterback in the NFL being Patrick Mahomes, we may be past that, and I think he's regressed to the point where he's in that conversation of 1A players rather than him just being the layup answer of being the best quarterback in the league. Because I think talent-wise, although Josh Allen does not have the accolades or the Super Bowl / playoff wins in their head-to-head, also is heavily skewed in favor of Mahomes, I do think Josh Allen specifically has caught up to the pack a little bit. I think Lamar Jackson, despite his injuries, has also, kind of closed the gap there. Now, you could always argue Mahomes because of the stats and the accolades, but I think it's become more of a conversation in recent years. I will say, I think Kansas City at this point in time is not going to be this world-beating entity that they were from 2018 to 2024, where they're winning 10-plus games every regular season. They're always favored in the playoffs. They seem to pull these playoff wins out of their butt. I think that is not necessarily totally over. I still could see them, doing well, and I could honestly see Mahomes playing into his 40s and being a really, really dynamic 40-year-old player, dynamic for that age. But I think the regularity in which we see Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes specifically perform to this insane level is going to become more infrequent. In regard to Mahomes' athleticism, I think he'll be fine because essentially the way I feel about it is the past couple years, so I'd take from 2023 to last year, the past 3 seasons, that's kind of where I think we're going to see Mahomes live for the remainder of his 30s. He'll definitely break into 30 touchdowns a couple times, passing-wise at the end of the season. Maybe we see him miss a few more games. Maybe he's only playing 14 regular season games instead of 16 and 17. But somewhere in the 3,500 to 4,000 range, kind of at the upper ceiling, I see that out of him. I see less dynamic scrambling. I think he's going to turn more into a Ben Roethlisberger type, not where he's guys bouncing off of him, but a little bit more sneaky scrambling ability rather than just, Mahomes could just take off for 30 yards. And it's not like taking off like Lamar Jackson, but more just kind of puttering his way to a big gain because he's athletic enough to squeak out of the pocket. I think his arm strength still remains really good. I think it maybe has regressed a little bit, but I don't think guys start losing that until they're mid-30s at least, and depending on how many shoulder surgeries and whatnot that they've had. So I like Kansas City to be in the mix. They're a veteran team. They're competent. He's kind of got that Tom Brady edge where he's won enough already early in his career that he mentally knows how to win games. And I think the combination with Andy Reid is going to allow that to continue. Now, I will say one caveat that could throw a wrench in my projection of him is if Andy Reid decides to retire or Kansas City moves on from him and they decide to hire a new coach. We've never seen these two, Andy and Patrick, play without each other. And I know people say we've never seen Patrick without Travis Kelce. I think that's going to be less of an issue. I think Travis Kelce, he'll find other receivers, even if they aren't very good, and tight ends too, to have Patrick gamify the offense and move the ball up the field. I think that's all going to be maybe a little more baked into the situation than just, we're going to overly rely on Travis Kelce and a speedster wide receiver. But if Andy Reid leaves, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. My last point, and I'll throw it back to you, and I want everybody to understand this. I think there is maybe a 10 to 5% possibility. So again, small chance that Mahomes in the second half of his career could end up like an Albert Pujols. And here's what I mean by that. Albert Pujols, for the first 10 years of his career with the St. Louis Cardinals, was on an all-time trajectory. People were penciling him in as one of the greatest players of all time, top 30 player of all time, top 20. In some instances, he won World Series in 2006 and 2011. He won MVP awards. Albert Pujols was on top of the baseball world and was seemingly dominating year in and year out. Now, when Albert Pujols was 31 years old, he signed a long-term deal with the Los Angeles Angels, who are not a great franchise, but I think, injuries and changing circumstances kind of caught up to him. And in the second half of his career, even though he played 9 more seasons, the majority of them with the Angels, he only mustered a WAR of 12.6, and that's wins above replacement. So it's essentially it's essentially a metric to tell how good you are as a complete player, specifically at the plate, and he only got a 12.6 when there were seasons in 2005, 6, 7 where he's getting an 8.5 WAR on his own. So there's seasons he's almost eclipsing his 9-year WAR total in his prime. So Mahomes is kind of around that age. He's been beat up a little bit. I would say there is a slight possibility, even if Andy Reid leaves, that we could see not a fall off of the necessarily Pujols level, but a fall off in production due to the aforementioned factors, maybe loss of coach, loss of offensive talent players, maybe the offensive line regresses, he sustains an injury, or his nagging injuries catch up to him. So I'm not saying that's going to happen, but he's right around that age, and he didn't play that well last year, and he's regressed a little bit from his apex. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. We can get into the rankings soon. What's your take on all of this?
No, this is a tough question because there's multiple what ifs. And it's just I call it a food for thought question where I don't think anybody is going to have the right answer. I think there are potentially some things you could plan for, like you had mentioned, hey, this isn't his first knee surgery. I think especially this year, he's going to be more inclined to stay in the pocket. Not that he'll still take the open grass if he has it. But I don't think he's going to be doing some of the Mahomism moves that we've seen where he's diving and he's parallel with the ground and he's throwing it 20 yards. I don't think that's going to happen. For all I know, maybe by the end of the season, he's feeling that good. And you are right. The medical science has definitely improved. It's one of those where part of me, from a medical standpoint, is that because he got injured at the end of the season, I'm he'll be ready to play, but is that 80%? Is that 90%? And it's you all need to protect him as much as you can for the next couple months until he gets full confidence back in that knee, because that's often the most discussed point of it is that, hey, maybe everything is structurally sound, but how confident, even though he can say it is, you have to watch his play. And I'm sure that'll be one of the first things that they do. Game 1 with Kansas City is they're going to have cameras on him staring at that knee, trying to figure out, okay, is he pivoting like he wants to? Does he seem like he's playing, I don't want to say scared, but is he hesitant on that? That's going to give us a real inkling on where his mindset is with that. Now, the Andy Reid it's one of those things, not if it's going to happen, it's when kind of situation. I don't know if Kansas City would be the organization to, let's just say, fire him, but I could see maybe if the next couple years it's, they just haven't, they're playing in the wild card and they lose twice in the wild card, and they're you know what, maybe it's time for some change. We're going to mutually part ways. We're not going to fire basically our Hall of Fame coach. He's going to mutually agree to step away. Maybe a Bruce Arians situation where he's in a different part of the organization at that point. But that's going to be a factor, I would imagine, in the next 5 years, that, hey, there's going to be a changing of the guard. who's going to make the decision on what head coach to bring? How much word does Patrick Mahomes have into that? Who is available? What's the circumstance in the NFL? What if Andy Reid steps down or is forced out, and then Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford retires, and Sean McVay is like, you know what? Maybe I want to work with Patrick Mahomes. I'm just throwing that random scenario out there. But you got to imagine maybe there's another. Patrick Mahomes could potentially be such an enticing player to work with that he could drag another good coach with an organization over to them. So I do see being that a possibility. I think my biggest, let's just say, pause with this organization is that they have, if Bengals fans know this, is that if you have a few years, and many other organizations, the Raiders, the Lions, they've seen some of this, where if you have 2 to 3 years where you don't hit on your draft picks and 90% of them aren't on your roster anymore, or it's like, hey, you're going to give, I hate to pick on this guy, but let's say Karlaftis, one of their defensive ends, that type of money, and he's subpar. He's, it's like, oh, we're giving you a lot of money to, get an average amount of pressures and sacks. I'm like, you're not managing your cap well. You're not drafting well. You're going to have all this talent go to other places. I'm like, hell, you just lost your entire DB room, I feel like, this past offseason. And, yeah, I like your first-round pick from LSU, the corner, but you take one step forward, 2 steps back. This is a team that I don't think they've been aggressive enough to try to fix their mistakes the past few years. I think they've been somewhat complacent and saying, hey, we got Patrick Mahomes, we've always got a chance. I'm like, this is true, but it's almost like you guys have an ankle weight, hooked up to him. You got the ball and chain, and every year it's gotten a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger, and now we're at this crossroad where we all know this. Patrick Mahomes needs more help. And, Chris Jones on defense, the defense needs to be a little bit better. The team is struggling as a whole. And it feels like they're relying on their Superman. And I'm seeing year after year, I'm like, where's the help coming? When is it coming? So it's frustrating as a football fan, even though I do not like, let's just say, it's not that I don't like Patrick Mahomes. I think he's a good guy. It's just for me, it's like one of those where we've talked about this before on previous pods. Like, you hated Tom Brady kind of in your grow up because he was the villain, and Patrick Mahomes is that for me. He's my villain, even though I have no reason to actually root against him. And it's, just with all the circumstances, a lot of big what ifs, and I do think he'll still be productive. I just think that a lot of us, maybe we do get encapsulated in the moment, and we don't know, like, oh, what if, I'm just picking a name out, what if Bo Nix steps up and he starts to become something that we never imagined, or we see Lamar Jackson return with his rushing, attempts that he's done like 2 years ago. He was very obviously hurt last year with his hamstring and kept coming in, kept coming out, just wasn't the same player. It's like the NFL is always changing, and we're so focused on, if we can just keep this right now, they're going to be dominant for years. And it's like, you got too many new players coming in. You got too many players changing around, different schemes, different coaches. And I think that's the biggest problem with Kansas City is they just feels like they've been complacent for the past 3 years. It's like, oh, we let Tyreek Hill walk, and we're just going to keep exchanging all these different wide receivers out. And Tyreek Hill is a once-in-a-generation talent, but sometimes I don't even feel like they tried. You know what I mean? So that's my response to that. Now, in terms of, this is a very subjective one. This is in terms of legacy. Legacy at this point for Mahomes, and we're saying, let's just say, we know that yardage-wise, touchdown-wise, he's probably going to be top 5 in almost every category that we see by the time he retires. I'm just curious to see, let's say, hey, he's got 3 rings. I don't know. Maybe it stops there. Maybe he gets 1 MVP. Maybe it stops there. It's like, so he's obviously one of the more talented quarterbacks that we've ever seen to play the game. So I just wanted to propose, like, hey, here's a list of guys. You tell me, based on the accolades now, or you don't even got to think about it. It's more like a gut reaction. to say, hey, who is the better quarterback? Who's had the better career up to this point, or where you think Mahomes is going to finish? I think that's the subjective part of it. So let's just say I'm going to throw a name out there and you throw a name out there, and we'll just kind of go back and forth just on quarterbacks that we're going to list. Let's just say Aaron Rodgers. Do you feel like Patrick Mahomes has surpassed Aaron Rodgers at up to this point and potentially?
I'm leaning yes, honestly, but, big B, but, I feel like Aaron Rodgers is still the better quarterback. Does that make sense? I feel like
it does.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like this is, in terms of the accolades, I think it's like you kind of have to give it to Mahomes, especially the Super Bowls. But I'm like, Aaron Rodgers was just as dominant, if not more dominant, in his time span. But it's my point for this is that this is not a definitive. Is the fact that we could have an argument on this, whereas maybe 3 years ago you're like, oh yeah, Patrick Mahomes is going to beat all these guys. Now it's like, I got to pause. I'm like, we kind of have to wait to see it out. That's kind of, I guess, the point I'm trying to make here, to where I think somebody could be like, no, like you said, Aaron Rodgers. Somebody could be absolutely Aaron Rodgers. And I'm like, I don't think they can be wrong, you know. But, you know, so like here, that's one guy I nominated. Is there a quarterback that jumps out to you that you're like, what do you think about this guy?
I think the obvious one, and you know how I probably already feel about this, but I'll propose it to you, is Peyton Manning.
I think right now Patrick Mahomes still has to do more work to get past Peyton Manning, just in terms of a legacy situation.
And I agree with you, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those. Peyton Manning is like, you can make the argument he's top 3. I think he's definitely top 5. I don't know if I'm ready to put Mahomes in that category just yet. And I know, for some people, and I think rightfully so, you could put him in that top 5. I'm like, I haven't seen the ending. I'm like, you know what? For the longest time, we all thought Russell Wilson was a Hall of Famer. And then it just took 2 years to flip it. I'm like, what if we have the same thing here? I'm like, I've already got the full sample size of Peyton Manning, the good and the bad, and the good very much outweighs the bad. And I can make the argument that the bad it's not necessarily his fault.
And that's why I brought up Albert Pujols earlier in the show, is because to me, the dichotomy between his first, let's say, 10 so years, his St. Louis Cardinals career, as opposed to his Angels and then the kind of the washed portion of his career, are so different. So he was so clearly a better player with St. Louis as opposed to the Angels. And so you could honestly draw a line in between those two careers. Now, that doesn't mean Albert Pujols is not one of the greatest players of all time. It doesn't mean he's not a Hall of Famer. It's simply recognizing that he was a different player at his earlier portion of his career. The football version of this kind of is exactly what you said a second ago. Russell Wilson, his Seattle career, you could be saying he won the Super Bowl in 2013. He led the Seahawks to the playoffs over and over and over again. He was consistently a top 5 quarterback in the league. But when he got traded to Denver, things changed. He fell off. He was not athletically as gifted. He wasn't in a system that, let's say, glossed over some of his weaker attributes, both physically and mentally, at the quarterback position. When we talk about Peyton Manning, I think Peyton Manning is still better than Patrick Mahomes. I think even if you looked at their accolades, Peyton Manning obviously has more MVPs, but you could give it to Mahomes on the winning side of it. But when you look at that prime from say 2018 to 2023, I believe, to me that looks, in the Football Reference page, that looks very Peyton Manning to me, because the Colts were very clearly the best team in their division. They were rattling off in Peyton Manning's prime 10, 11, 12, 13-win seasons year after year. Peyton Manning was racking up the MVPs. I don't know if Patrick Mahomes is going to win any more MVPs. He'll be in the MVP conversation, but I don't feel as comfortable saying Mahomes will be in his mid 30s an MVP, like write it down caliber quarterback as I was with Peyton Manning and Aaron Rodgers. I want to bring this up too, is that so if we, because I put Peyton Manning ahead of Aaron Rodgers in the all-time list. So the other quarterback that kind of comes to my mind is Joe Montana. Now that becomes an old versus new, kind of like Unk debate. I never watched Joe Montana play. I know you haven't watched him either. But if we're talking about, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, to a lesser extent Joe Montana, or excuse me, I kind of messed up the pitch here, but like Drew Brees is another guy. I would put, gosh, it's tough. It's really tough. I would probably put Mahomes a little bit above Drew Brees, but I kind of feel like the Aaron Rodgers thing too. It's like, I still think Drew Brees is a better quarterback. I do. Like, if you're talking about Ben Roethlisberger, give me Mahomes. If you're talking about Phillip Rivers, Eli Manning, give me Mahomes. A lot of these guys, I'm sorry, it's like tough. Even John Elway, give me Mahomes. What do you think about that? Drew Brees, Joe Montana, those kind of guys.
I think I agree with you in terms of like, hey, let's say I'm going to put these guys in the same category, so don't be mad. Like Kurt Warner, Ben Roethlisberger, Russell Wilson. Like, obviously, those guys are all super talented and had their time, but Mahomes is hands down, accolade-wise, performance-wise, absolutely. Drew Brees, let me say this. Joe Montana, even though it's different era, like you said, we haven't watched him. It's like for the longest time, who was Brady chasing? It was Montana. Like, so guess what? Mahomes has not surpassed Montana for me. Just because Montana had that legacy. He was part of an offensive system that changed the NFL forever. He was on a legacy team that let's just say if you're opening a chapter book about the NFL and the history and you had to pick, let me look at it by decade. He's going to be on the face of it. Him and Jerry Rice are going to be the face of that one. Drew Brees, man, that's the tough one. Where I think, this is me being very picky. I can make the arguments that I think Mahomes has been a part of better teams as a whole, and he's had more support on defense than Drew Brees has ever had. Drew Brees had a very unique career in terms of with San Diego and his injuries. He almost got sent to Miami, but then he signs with the Saints, and he becomes basically the face of a franchise. Still today, if you think about the Saints, I think everybody would be like, who's the first player? It's Drew Brees that pops up. I think Drew Brees, accolade-wise, does not match up with Patrick Mahomes. And to be quite frank, I don't know if ability-wise he does either. It's just that Drew Brees did something so exceptional in terms of his accuracy that it's been unmatched. I'll say that. I think I'll put that stamp on it. Where I think Drew Brees is the most accurate quarterback of all time in terms of, hey, you got to get it into this, foot by foot box. Who you letting take this throw? And I'm like, I'll take Drew Brees on that one. But, maybe I'll put Mahomes ahead of Drew Brees, but that is an argument. That is something I would have to do a very deep dive of. That would be kind of the line for me where I'm like, I agree. I do think he's ahead of John Elway. I think he's ahead of Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre. I'll put those two in the same category. I can't put him ahead of Peyton. I can't put him ahead of Montana. I can't put him ahead of Brady. So I guess right now, he's on my
4,
number
5, 6 range.
Yeah, I think he's in that range. I think you could have arguments about Drew Brees. I think you could potentially have arguments about Dan Marino. I think you could have an argument John Elway or Aaron Rodgers. But for me, I think for right now he's at number 4 for me. Let's say if he just continues like he's been doing the past couple years, where it's like, oh, here's a 4,000-yard season, maybe a 30 touchdown season here and there, where I'm like, he's good, but he's not, like you said, on the MVP ballot, he's on there. I got to vote for him. I'm like, I think that time's probably passed in terms of at least his current situation. Now, if let's just say Mahomes gets a little couple years down the road, and he's like, I want off the team. I'm like, now this is an interesting situation where I don't think he would. I don't think he's that type of guy where he would force himself out of an organization. But I'm like, maybe it's the reverse where he kind of goes on this, like Peyton Manning. Maybe he jumps to a new team and he finds success with them for a few years. That's why this question is so hard. It's a big what if. But I'm saying right now, I'm like, I guess he's fourth on my list.
So I have a couple points. I think, one, if he continues at the, let's say, past 3-season average for the next, let's say, 5 to 6 years, you could probably make a strong argument he's at number 3 to maybe number 2, depending on the playoff success. Maybe he usurps Peyton Manning. I even still don't think he would do that for me, but I'm biased. That's a tough sell for me because I genuinely believe that situationally, it may be some other factors that there could have been a case where Peyton Manning became the greatest quarterback of all time, but he's not, and that's just what it is. The second point I want to make is this season in the legacy trajectory of Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs is exceptionally consequential. I think this could be a falling domino season for them. If things don't work out, if he underperforms, if Reed is so clearly over the hill a little bit coaching-wise and they start to get a little bit of an appetite to move on, I think that's all going to be, that seed's going to be planted this season. And so this is a sliding doors moment for Mahomes and the Chiefs. Now, I don't think this is going to, like, if things fall apart or he gets hurt or he underperforms, I don't think this is going to be like, oh, Mahomes sucks now, he's washed. Obviously not. I just think this season could lead to events in the future that ultimately impact his Chiefs career in a few years. The last point I want to bring up, and this is about Tom Brady, and I know you know this, and you've been a Tom Brady guy a lot longer than I have, but there were a lot of people on the internet that were talking about, and off the internet too, on TV, NFL pundits, who were talking about if Mahomes continues at this trajectory or he's got X Super Bowls in X amount of years, and here we're going to stack him up against Tom Brady, and if he continues at this pace, all of those kind of arguments. And to me, I never really bought into that, and there's a certain part of me as just a sports fan, now that I've washed my Brady hate away and can kind of appreciate him for the player he was post-retirement, I think a part of me was like, no, like, what are we just giving this guy the crown? And I like the guy. I like Mahomes. I don't really necessarily like the Chiefs past 2019, but I liked Mahomes, but I was like, dude, there's no way. Like, Brady, this is I really think it'll be kind of like LeBron, and, we can talk about the LeBron Jordan thing, not here, but the argument. It's like there's going to be people, and there's going to be a stat accumulation for LeBron that's like, dude, you can't pass him. There's not going to be a guy in the modern NBA 10, 20, 30 years from now that's going to pass LeBron's stat totals. It's just never going to be replicated again. And I think you could make that argument for Tom Brady too, because of the length of his career, the amount of Super Bowls, the amount of success. And so, to me, I've always been steadfast in the opinion that Tom Brady is the unequivocal quarterback GOAT. And he defeated Patrick Mahomes in his physical prime, granted it was COVID, in the Super Bowl, and pretty convincingly so on his second team. So, to me, that's an argument in favor of Brady. Now, we're not comparing them, 1-to-1, but I genuinely believe Tom Brady's in a class of his own. And the reason he's so good is not because he's a Bill Belichick merchant, but he is exceptional because he was unexceptional in so many, attributes that we feel like a quarterback needs. His value was more intangible than it wasn't like the physical, and I think that's what made him so special. It's like that gut feeling, and Mahomes has a little bit of that, but to me it's just not the same thing of Tom Brady's got the ball, 3 minutes left, this game's over, that's a wrap, he's going to win, and then he always does. He literally always does. The times he didn't, like the 2006 AFC Championship game, in which, the Colts finally got over the hump, it was so shocking, and that becomes a legacy game for Peyton, and they finally get over the hump and win the Super Bowl against Chicago, and all of that. And it was because we beat Brady, and that just shows you the power of Brady. And so to me, the pundits and the podcasters, the YouTubers who were putting Mahomes at that trajectory in line with, hey, some people are even saying he's better than Brady. I think that is clown world. Like, I think that is so clown world, and we're going to look back on that stuff and feel that way. Not because Mahomes didn't end up being great, but because it was so premature and we were so desperate and people were looking for content, and that's what they were talking about. And I never understood that argument. I always felt like it was content brain stuff. And so, to me, I think he's probably going to end up being like the third, second best quarterback of all time. I still think some guys were more, let's say, I'm not making a comment on his intelligence. I just think when you get to this like level of quarterback play, it becomes like, I think Aaron Rodgers, it'll become like, pick your poison kind of thing. Which guy do you prefer more? And you're always going to be able to make those arguments unless Mahomes just completely turns it up and he's got this second half of his career that you're like, wow, okay, this guy has just separated himself from the pack so much so that we can't even really have these discussions. And that's what Tom Brady did. And I never liked people comparing his career to Tom's so early on. I always felt it was disrespectful because Tom is one of the greatest stories of all time. He's the best quarterback of all time, and I think that's kind of where I leave this, is just we have to cool it on some of these projections and these arguments. And I think we just need to let Patrick be Patrick and allow him to have this second half of his career without putting this undue pressure on him to exceed a ghost that, is in many ways going to haunt him, and he didn't even ask that of himself.
Yeah, I do want to go back to the domino effect portion that you spoke of, and I think this is the point, maybe you addressed it very well, that I was trying to make earlier, is that the NFL is, in every league, is always constantly changing. You cannot base on what success you're having now to exist 2 years down the road. And this is the fact that if we sat down and just looked within their division in the AFC West, I think every single one of those teams, the Chargers, the Broncos, the Raiders, for the most part, got better. Denver did lose a couple guys, but it's like they retooled a little bit. It's like, we lost a little bit on defense, but we got, Jalen Waddle on offense to help us out here. The Raiders just threw money at everything, and they got some really good guys on that defense now and shore up that offensive line, some playmakers for Kirk Cousins and Mendoza whenever he steps in. And then the Chargers finally got everybody back healthy, and it's like, well, if they could stay healthy, maybe they go on the run that we thought they would last year. And I'm just looking at the Chiefs, and I'm like, I don't know if they actually got better this year. And hey, the domino effect can be real, is that all these other teams are moving around you, and if you're complacent, things will happen. I will say on that, the last point, he probably will finish up number 2 overall on the list. I do think that conversation of him being the GOAT is way, way too early. And I think that is, yes, board content creators. I could go a step further and I could say that it's brazen. I think that's poor taste for you to be even having that conversation, where it's like, hey, you're a public figure and you're using your voice to spew, I don't want to call it nonsense, but it's kind of reckless just to even be like, hey, we're going to toss away one guy's legacy when this guy is only at that point in time 5 years into his career. I'm like, that's wild for you to think that the roller coaster ride is just going to continue like that. I'm like, if you've really been a fan of the NFL this long, you should know that it changes all the time. Any league, it changes all the time. You can't be complacent. I could say that with basketball at the NBA when the Celtics formed their super team with Ray Allen and Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce, and then what happened the next year? That's when the Miami super team formed in response to it. It happens all the time. You cannot get complacent. And I will say, in terms of quarterbacks that I've watched play, let's just say if your team is playing them, and this is the point that you kind of went off of with Tom Brady, it's just so shocking when the Patriots at that time just didn't basically, despite all odds, win the game kind of situation. I've never watched another quarterback besides Tom Brady. I think Mahomes is that second one, and maybe Aaron Rodgers is that third one, where it's like, hey, your team is up by 4 points and they have the ball with a minute left, and you are living in existential terror for that minute because you're like, he's going to do it. I've seen it happen too many times before, and they're just driving the ball down, and you're like, losing your mind. We've all been there before, whether it's rooting for one of them or let's just say a few years ago, great example is Patrick Mahomes against the Bills. There's 13 seconds left, and I'm like, it's not done. I have to watch every single second of it. And what happens? He pulls it off. So in terms of that category, he's like an assassin. He's in the same tier as Tom Brady, where it's like, I am scared to death that we are winning and that they have the ball. There's only 4 quarterbacks in my lifetime where I could honestly say that I'm terrified of that man having the ball and we're letting our defense control the fate or lose control of it is a better way to say it. I don't know if... Go ahead.
I want to add two quick bullet points to the Tom Brady thing. You mentioned brazen disrespect in regard to the conversation. And to me, it's even more, let's say, disrespectful because Tom Brady was last playing in 2022? He wasn't even retired for 10 plus years, 15 plus years. Maybe the newest fans don't quite remember Legacy Brady, Apex Brady, whatever, and that's all fine, but he was still good even with the Buccaneers at the end of his career. He was not washed. Brady was never washed, ever. The worst he was at the beginning of his career when he was winning Super Bowls. You could call him a game manager, but after a certain point, he just became elite, and he was elite every single year for the most part from then on out. So to me, it's even more a little ridiculous because he's such a recent retirement. He's even more a part of our sports content ecosystem now because post-retirement he's really forayed into the internet, and now he's obviously on Fox broadcasting. So that's part of it that I definitely agree with. And the other bullet point I want to say is when we talk about this, very strange, which I think this conversation is going to die down again unless Mahomes just goes Super Saiyan mode, is to me the quality of teams that each player was respectively playing against. And I know Mahomes has beaten a lot of really good teams, but I think Tom Brady was beating better teams. He was beating better quarterbacks. The NFL's quarterback talent level was higher in Brady's prime than it is now. There are less good, or there's less plentiful elite quarterbacks than there were in the mid to early 2010s, the late 2000s. That's the quarterback golden era. Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger, Peyton Manning, even some of the guys you could. They're not on the same level.
Eli Manning on
Eli
runs.
Manning.
Yeah.
You could throw Cam Newton in there. I mean, Andrew Luck. There's these guys who had fallen between the cracks, or their legacies aren't as fleshed out, or they were a little earlier in the. I mean, you could throw Kirk Cousins,
Phillip Rivers. Ryan.
I mean, so now, Mahomes is obviously beating players like Joe Burrow and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. But I mean, guys I know these people want to think that Andy Dalton wasn't very good and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like looking at Bryce Young, and I'm like, sorry, Andy Dalton mogs Bryce Young, bro. It just does. He just does. And so I know these guys, like these kids, want to have these arguments about the NBA and blah, 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 and how these new players, and I think it's a little easier to have in basketball. But the football stuff, specifically with the quarterbacks, it just gets ridiculous, and it just becomes like laughable at a certain point. So I am glad you brought that up. But yeah, to me, Mahomes is beating less quality. I love Brock Purdy. I'm a Brock Purdy truther, but he's beating Brock Purdy and Jimmy Garoppolo in the Super Bowl.
That's 2 of his Super Bowls.
Right.
49ers.
Tom Brady was beating, he's beating Kurt Warner in the Super Bowl. He is beating Russell Wilson in the Super Bowl. Guess what? He's beating Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. Need I say more?
Yeah, and you're not even listening to who he's had to get over in the AFC. Like you said, Ben Roethlisberger. Those fantastic Ravens teams with the defense, and Joe Flacco having years. And we could do a whole other segment on that topic. There is whose careers or whose legacies would be so much vastly improved if Tom Brady just disappeared kind of situation. How many Super Bowls would Roethlisberger have? How many Super Bowls would Peyton Manning have? How many Super Bowls would the Ravens organization have? That is an interesting topic for that. I have been waiting for this next segment because you have teased it for over a month and you have been doing research. This might be your magnum opus. In response to this, I have kept myself in the dark because I wanted to be, let's just say, maybe not the word ignorant, but I want it to be, let's just say, as see-through, as visible as I possibly can with this. And just respond just like maybe everybody else is who's watching this episode of the pod. So, Kenton, whenever you're ready, why don't you introduce this topic to us? And I'm going to sit back and react and just let you have the floor.
Wow, magnum opus. That's a lot of pressure, guys. Okay, let's see if I can. The pressure's on. Let's see if I can step up to the plate here. So, for those of you who are regular listeners of the pod, you may be aware that I've teased this in the past, but I'm just going to go for it. With LeBron James, and we're really quick, we're talking about GOATs. We could name this episode the GOAT Cast, honestly, because we're having all of these legacy discussions. I want to put on my Nick Wright hat, my Bill Simmons hat, and talk about this. And it is, I believe, personally, this is my opinion, that LeBron's 2018 decision to sign as a free agent with the Los Angeles Lakers was one of the worst free agency decisions ever made by an NBA super duper star in basketball history. So I want to let that marinate for a second, okay? Because some of you out there who, maybe big LeBron stans or just basketball observers in general might have a knee-jerk reaction to that. But listen to what I'm saying. I'm not disputing that LeBron's not the greatest player of his generation. I'm not saying his career isn't multi-platinum perfection, although there are some gripes you could have with it, obviously. I am simply saying his 2018 decision to go to the Lakers as a basketball decision. I didn't say business. I didn't say, Hollywood, making money, clutch sports, all of that. I'm talking about strictly basketball. I think it was one of the worst free agency decisions by an NBA superstar of all time. So let's start it off here. LeBron James is no longer going to play for the Los Angeles Lakers. He has made it clear throughout this offseason that he is moving on from the team. LeBron has spent 8 seasons, I believe, from 2018 to 2026 with LA. Okay, and you guys might see me looking off screen. You might see me looking at my notes here, so just bear with me. So, he spent 8 seasons with the Lakers, signed there from the Cavs, coming off a finals appearance. He was known for making the finals in Cleveland during his second stint. So, LeBron gets to the Lakers in 2018. He's just completed it in 2026, his tenure. Final record in the regular season, I believe the regular season, 287 wins to 192 losses. It is a 59.9% winning percentage, lower than his 2 combined Cleveland stints and also his Miami Heat stint. So already right there, we have a kind of an inkling of where I'm going with this. He's got a lower winning percentage. To me, basketball is all about winning. And then whatever you win in basketball can be used to build a platform to succeed in other areas, which LeBron has largely done, in fairness. So, around 60% winning percentage, okay? What did LeBron do good in Los Angeles? Well, he won the 2020 NBA championship, okay? He was, and I still think the Lakers were strong contenders to win that championship, even in the COVID-shortened season. So if that wouldn't have happened, I still believe the Lakers could have won that championship. And I think a lot of you also feel that way. So I don't want to necessarily take that away from him. I'm not going to be this guy who makes this argument like from my heart and also be like Mickey Mouse ring, even though I don't put the bubble championship in at the same level of significance as I do the regular NBA championship, just because of fan presence and home arenas and atmospheres and all of that. I think that's a key part of basketball, and I think the lack of that in that season is why I don't necessarily place it at the same level, even though it is a championship nonetheless. So, LeBron leaves Cleveland. He goes to Los Angeles. His first season there, they missed the playoffs. LeBron misses 27 games. He's banged up. Oh, and really quick, before I start really going in on this, at the time, LeBron was 33 years old. I believe he is 41 years old right now. So he's 33 when he made this decision. Still, because we know LeBron James is an athletic freak, still in the, maybe not apex prime of his athleticism, but still certainly you could easily say 3, 4, 5 years left in the really, really high level tank that LeBron has. So 2018 missed the playoffs, or 2018-19 missed the playoffs. 2020 bubble championship. 21 missed the playoffs. 21 lost in the first round. 22 missed the playoffs. 23 Western Conference Finals, ended up being swept by Denver. 24 lost in the first round. 25 lost in the first round. 26 lost in the Western Conference semifinals. So they had multiple first round exits, the Lakers did. They had never returned to the finals since 2020. They missed the playoffs twice. They got one championship out of it. And to me, at the latter part of LeBron's Lakers tenure, it felt like he was stat collecting, I would say more so. The collective fan base seemed to move off of the number one goal being to win the championship. Even if a lot of Lakers fans did want that, I felt like if you asked a Lakers fan, true diehard, for anonymity, they would probably tell you that they did not expect to win a championship the past 3, 4, 5 years. There were just better teams in the West, and I think they conceded that. And they also would probably concede that there was players out there who eclipsed LeBron in terms of just pure importance to their teams. So I ran down all of these winning percentages, all of these regular season and playoff finishes, and here we are. And so, to me, one of the biggest gripes about LeBron's Lakers tenure is that he didn't really have a lot of memorable moments from it. I feel like I'll just speak for myself, and if you're a true basketball head, you could dispute that all you want, and that's fine. I'm not pretending to be the biggest NBA guy out there. But I feel like I more so remember the Cavs years, the second stint, the Heat years. I remember more from the first Cavs tenure than I do from this Lakers tenure. For the best quote-unquote basketball player of all time, or the best basketball player in the league, to be playing in the NBA's like largest or second largest market for 8 years, and it's largely forgettable, to me is weird. It's very strange. I don't know if you feel the same way about that, but I can't really recall too many moments where LeBron, it's like this is legacy defining and all that. It was more so LeBron broke the record, or they had the bubble championship, but there weren't a lot of great playoff series. There weren't a lot of great playoff runs. There weren't a lot of he missed some time in the regular season. I felt like LeBron's Lakers tenure was more marred by what happened in the offseason, rather with the Russell Westbrook trade, the Anthony Davis trade, than what happened in the playoffs in the regular season. So I think that already shows you how kind of weirdly boring and weirdly boring it was. It just not a lot happened. And to me, when I brought up the 33 years old thing, this is kind of the point I wanted to make. I think LeBron was at the point of his career where he chose business success over basketball success. When he made this decision, he, to me, still very much had an opportunity to maximize his basketball success. And I think he and the people around him made a collective decision. Not that I'm sure they didn't think that going to the Lakers was going to end up the way it did. This is more of a hindsight observation, although I didn't love it at the time either. I felt like, they probably thought they could revive the Lakers and, win a bunch of championships with Anthony Davis, et cetera, et cetera. But I felt like at 33 years old, LeBron could have went to a better basketball situation and maximized his abilities and his talents, because he knew at that point in time he was on the clock. He's still playing now at 41 years old, but he was on the clock at 33. He needed to maximize this window, and he just did not do that with the Lakers. And I think, it's not like he didn't do the Kevin Durant where he went to the Warriors and they immediately won a bunch of championships and they were already the best team in the league. The Lakers were largely dysfunctional in the 2010s. They were largely dysfunctional. They were an ineffective franchise. They made blundering decisions constantly. They were, at the time of LeBron's signing, a team that was focused on its young core. They had Lonzo Ball, they had Brandon Ingram, I think Kyle Kuzma, and then they were bringing in LeBron James. To me, that was probably the most excited Lakers fans had been in a long time, even before LeBron signed. They're like, all right, we like Lonzo because he had a lot of aura, a lot of motion. They liked Kyle Kuzma, all these guys. And I think the Lakers fans were actually a little bit excited about their young core of players. Now, those guys didn't end up being very much in the NBA. Lonzo got hurt. Kyle Kuzma became more of a role player. And Brandon Ingram is just kind of an all-star level player, but really nothing to write home about. So LeBron takes over the franchise, and immediately it becomes less about, hey, we're building something again, to it's the LeBron show. And so you think when you get LeBron, you're going to be immediately at the competitive apex among the NBA, because that's what he did in Cleveland. He went and signed in Cleveland. They were immediately good. Bang, they were making the finals every year. They beat the 73-9 win Warriors in 2016. That just did not materialize in Los Angeles. It just did not. And in fact, I think it was very disappointing with the amount of talent they had. Anthony Davis was a great player, but he was not that trade. You could argue it worked out because they did win an NBA championship, but I think even in hindsight now, they didn't win as much with that duo as they should have. And it was largely underwhelming. And Anthony Davis doesn't even play for them anymore. LeBron's moving on. So I think, why did LeBron make the decision at 33 years old to go to the Lakers? Was it all pure ego? I think that played a part in it. But from what I understand, and this is just my opinion, why would he give up on continuing to build his basketball legacy when he knows he's chasing the ghost of Michael Jordan, who people reflexively say is the greatest player of all time? Because the one ironclad thing unks and old heads have in their pro-Jordan arguments is the winning. It is the 6 championships. It's the never lost in the finals. It is the domination in the finals. LeBron fans like to poke holes here and there in those arguments, and, that's fine. But that is the one thing that Jordan has over LeBron. It is the winning. It is the finals. And so even though LeBron lost a number of times in the finals up until that point when he was 33, he still could, in my opinion, have won a few more championships. It's certainly more than one. He chose to go to a team in a more competitive Western Conference where it was harder to make the finals than it would have been in the East. So that's already a little bit like, okay, why would you do that? If you really, really cared about winning, championships and eclipsing Jordan. And again, this is some things we put on LeBron. I don't know, I'm not in his head. It's kind of me thinking through it. But why would you go to the West and not stay in the East? It didn't make a lot of sense to me because he was just coming off all these finals with Cleveland. And the other thing is, and this is kind of what I think, is at that point in time, LeBron already thought he was the GOAT. He told an ESPN podcast in March 2018, he said that he believed he was already the GOAT because he was kind of reminiscing about the 2016 finals, and he said he thought, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but him beating the 73-9 Warriors in the finals made him the greatest player of all time. And so at that point, if he already believed that, then to me, he had wrapped it up. He'd wrapped the package up already. He's like, I'm already the GOAT. Okay, everything else is gravy. Everything else is gravy. Because at that point, that Warriors championship was in 2018, it was a lot more fresh. It was only 2 years off of that Warriors championship. So everybody was kind of at the forefront of their mind and all these basketball legacy discussions. They didn't have another 8 years of Lakers malaise to hold against LeBron James in this GOAT discussion. So if he already thought he was a GOAT, what incentive did he have to continue chasing the best basketball situation when he instead could have chased the best lifestyle and financial decision for him, which was in Los Angeles? You can make the argument, New York, whatever, that could have been better. I don't know, but I think Rich Paul and him and Mav Carter, these guys got together and they're like, hey, LeBron wants to expand his production studio. We're going to start Spring Hill Productions. We are going to make LeBron a media superstar in a way that he was not before. We're going to have him star in Hollywood movies. He, of course, was in his own rendition of Space Jam, another weird legacy choice, chasing the ghost of Jordan. But LeBron, as people famously know, became a billionaire a couple years ago on paper, and I think that was always one of his personal goals. And I think going to Los Angeles and the corresponding business decisions made him a billionaire. So if that's what he was more focused on, that's great. But it seemed to me that his choice to go to Los Angeles was more of a business decision rather than a basketball decision. And I think, this Albert Pujols thing, this is what I was kind of talking about earlier, and again, that's not really comparable, but it is in a certain extent. It's like now, this isn't like a couple 2 to 3 years. And again, it wasn't I want to preface, it's not an abject failure in Los Angeles. Like, it just was underwhelming to disappointing. They did win some, but they didn't win enough, and they had too many inconsequential seasons, in my opinion. So, when Albert Pujols went to the Angels and they became largely irrelevant, and then LeBron goes to the Lakers, and after like 2022 or whatever, it's just the touring LeBron show, and they're the Lakers. That's what the Lakers are, and the Nuggets aren't really scared of them, and all these other teams, the Warriors, the Celtics, whoever, they're like, yeah, cool, the Lakers, they got LeBron, but we're better than them now. And I didn't think if LeBron went to, I thought if LeBron went to a different team, he still could have been like LeBron and at the forefront of winning. I don't know what team that would have been. I know people were talking about the Sixers back in 2018, but it just felt like he chose money over basketball success. And it's not wrong. I just think in hindsight we can critique that, because when you are comparing LeBron to Jordan, and again, you may be like LeBron and think that in March of 2018 he was already the GOAT, and that's fine. But to me, there was a lot more room to put that conversation to bed. He could have put himself in a position to nail the coffin shut, basketball-wise, where nobody disputed, even with the finals losses, that LeBron was better than Jordan. Nobody would have. LeBron's got 6 rings. He did it in 4 cities. He's got 6 rings. What are we even talking about? He's LeBron James. He played for 22 careers, or 22 years in his career. So instead, he thought he was already the GOAT. He chose the wrong franchise, and he had 8 years of underwhelming malaise. And now he's probably going to be ring chasing at the end of his career to get himself that elusive 5th ring, which to me, weighted, even if he did win that, would not be as significant as rings he hypothetically could have won in like 2018, 19, 20, 21. He did win in 20, but like 21, that kind of part of his career. He forewent that to win in Hollywood, win in the financial sector, win in entertainment and podcasting and on the internet. And he did all that. Now he's golfing and he's a media superstar. But what about that GOAT debate? It matters to us. Probably doesn't matter to much as him, because again, he said he was the best player already. I think in totality, when we have these legacy discussions, I want to put my name on this, because I genuinely believe this. It is. And I didn't do enough research on what the other worst decisions would have been, in fairness. But to me, it was one of the worst superstar decisions of all time. He cut his winning window short. He could have been the GOAT. Now it's still an open question. People are going to use this stint against him, especially as these guys start talking and we zoom out a little more and we get removed from LeBron's career, or prime LeBron. He's still, to me, it's so frustrating because he's still really, 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 really good. And he could have been the best and won more rings and MVPs, and instead he gave that up to become a billionaire. And he chose a dysfunctional franchise to try and maximize his winning potential. But for all the aforementioned reasons, I just felt like they weren't the best choice for him. And he won in the game of life. He won in basketball. But when we get down to these granular legacy conversations, I think it has to be said. And guys like Nick Wright and them are going to have to answer for this, because LeBron did. Jordan had his little wizard stint, and that's fine. But his first retirement, he retired at the apex of his powers. He missed 2 years in his prime to play baseball or whatever. I mean, we've watched LeBron wane. Not as much as, he's still a tremendous player, still an all-star, but we've watched him wane, and I just think he missed a true opportunity to put this conversation away. And now, you can argue stats, you can argue this and that, but there's still going to be a generation of people who are like, sorry, man, 6 championships, L. So the last thing I want to say on this argument is about Kobe Bryant. This is another part of the equation that I feel like is talked about more. I'm certainly not the first person to have this opinion. I'm not. Lakers fans have this opinion. I'm sure a lot of people who are in the media sphere do as well, and online, is that the Lakers, even while LeBron was there and he was still arguably the face of the NBA, were Kobe Bryant's team. The Lakers fans have a bond with Kobe that seemingly cannot be broken. It cannot be usurped by LeBron, who was a transplant. Kobe was their guy. That was their dude. He won them 5 championships. He lived in Los Angeles. He was there his whole career. And he put the city on his back, along with Shaquille O'Neal earlier in his career, and won them rings. And that was very special. And everybody remembers that if you live in Los Angeles. LeBron came as a transplant. He was not drafted there. I know Kobe wasn't drafted there, but he played his entire career there. So, and he was their best player in years where they were down, too, by the way. There was a lull in Kobe's mid-career after the Colorado incident where they were making the playoffs, but they weren't that good, and Kobe had to score 35 points a game in 2006, won the MVP, but they had like Smush Parker and Kwame Brown and all these guys who are famously, weren't as good as his previous teammates. And so it always felt like LeBron could never, no matter what he did, no matter how he endeared himself to the fan base, how much he ingratiated himself in Los Angeles, he just couldn't beat the ghost of Kobe. And then, unfortunately, Kobe passes away in 2020, and he becomes a basketball martyr. He becomes this almost mythical figure. And so LeBron was already, 3 years into his Lakers career, 4 years into his Lakers career at that point. Now it's over. Like, there's nothing he can do to ever, not that he wanted to eclipse Kobe, but he couldn't make his era in Los Angeles. LeBron's era will always be in Los Angeles, will always be overshadowed by Kobe's death. And I think that's another thing that he had to, kind of grapple with in private. So in short, that is my opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this.
Well said. Well said. All right, there's a lot to diverge into that. Okay. So I will say, I think this is one of the biggest, let's say, arguments against LeBron with the Lakers is that, hey, you went over there, you have one ring, and it was the bubble ring. There is still, and there will always will be, a fair portion of people that put an asterisk by that championship. And they would have put an asterisk next to it if the Heat would have won. That's just how it is. The season was cut short. It was held in a different place than it usually was. It was a very unique living circumstance during the bubble tournament. Everything changed. The playoff, how many teams were in, how many that, da-da-da. So some people will say because that is different, you have to have the asterisk on it. So if you want to make that leap, and I'm kind of indifferent to it. I'm like, you did win a championship, but I'm fully willing to acknowledge that it is not an 82-game season. And it is different. It is different. You won a championship, but it's different. So I can be like, how much does the average fan take that into account for? Some people may not even accept it. So they can be like, oh, LeBron didn't win anything with the Lakers. I think that's a little too far. But I agree with you where LeBron, his move was largely forgettable. It's just another, I wouldn't even call it an era with the Lakers. It is, but it's like, they've had way more historically impressive players and moments. And like you said, hey, he got brought in. He's not a Laker born, bred, died. That's one of those things where if you live in LA, they don't joke around about their baseball and they don't joke around about their basketball, especially the Lakers. All right, we could talk about how wonderful fans they are with football, but at least with the Lakers, they do not play around with it. In terms of, and I do agree, one of the earlier points that you had made is that when he goes to the Lakers, it was huge news, but this is something that a once in a generational move felt like it was consistently being overshadowed by other teams or other players in the league in terms of transactions and whatnot. And I think part of that might be on the league itself to where they are still in the process, or this is when they were beginning to decide, hey, we need to find a replacement for the face of the league. I think this is the era when they were like, okay, a year or two in with the Lakers, they're like, we are going to continue to find whoever it is, whether it's Giannis, whether it's, whoever it might be. That's where I felt like in this time frame that started happening, where it wasn't LeBron. It was initially, but then it kind of got away from it, especially because it did take the Lakers a few years to look very competitive. He didn't walk in and was the first in the Western Conference seed. It didn't happen like that. This is a team that LeBron walks in after a year. He's like, all right, buddy, you're gone. We're trading you. We'll keep you. I'm bringing this. This is what LeBron does. He comes into a team just like some other superstars. All right, this isn't just a him thing, but this is LeBron. He's the first one to do it, where he's like, I'm the player, the coach, and the GM. I'm going to deconstruct it and reconstruct it in my vision. And yes, he brought in Anthony Davis. He brought in several other guys to where it's like, hey, Kuzma didn't survive on the team long. Ingram was gone. Ball, he was hurt, but he was gone. All of this youthful talent, which was the reason why, or at least a small part of the reason why, he did go over to the Lakers, because they did have an exciting young core. I agree with you in saying that the business aspect was most likely the largest impact of it. And if he said, if I could win a couple rings with the Lakers and rebuild this thing, it would be considered his, I don't want to say the magnum opus, but it'd be like the cherry on top in terms of his career. I think that's what he was envisioning. Like, you know what, maybe I don't necessarily get the number of rings, but just in terms of other accomplishments, I can finally trump Jordan. And you said during one of his interviews that he feels like he's past that. I think if you would have asked LeBron today, I don't think he would back down from it, but I think there would be a larger thought in the back of his head to where he's like, there are still too many people that don't think I'm the GOAT. Because I've been with the Lakers so long that I only have the Mickey Mouse ring to show for it, that people have started to maybe flip. People that were in the middle have decided that, hey, might be myself as well. I'll be honest, where I'm like, I think you should have accomplished more in that time frame with the amount of control that you had, with the amount of money that the Lakers have, and how much you are in charge of this. This was your baby. And it was not impressive at all. I agree with you in the point that LeBron joining the West, just from the beginning, was head-scratching in terms of just a basketball pursuit. And it's like, you've had a stranglehold on the East for almost your entire career. And you look around you and be like, it really hasn't changed that much since I've gotten into the league. You know, at the time, in 2018, apparently he was also considering the 76ers. Of course, he was still considering the Cavaliers. He was considering the Rockets. But I'm like, man, what if he had stayed with the Cavs? Or what if he went to the 76ers? I'm like, man, that would be a pretty damn crazy team. They'd be ready to win, like, right then. You know, obviously some other players would have, like, Tyrese Maxey would have not been a thing. But I'm like, hey, you know, this makes more sense than what you did with the Lakers. Because, hey, I mean, if you go year by year, more recently, obviously it's been the Thunder. You've had the Denver Nuggets. You had the Memphis Grizzlies go on a run for a year with Ja Morant before he got in trouble. Just the West has always been loaded, just as long as we've been alive, it feels like. It just feels like, for the most part, the West has had more teams at the top than the East has always had. Not that the East hasn't had the same talent level, but that the West for a long time has been a top 6 seeds. It could be anybody go on the run. And then you look at the East, it's like, it's 3 or 4 teams every other year or something like that. And for most of this, you know, the argument, the conversation that you make, I think you're accurate with what's been said, why he might have made his decision, why it looks so poorly when you're looking at everything. And I do think that LeBron focused on the business. I do think that initially he's like, you know what, I'm going to make LA my city. And then you had mentioned, I don't think that was ever going to happen. And then the timing of Kobe Bryant's death made it impossible, just cemented it. And LeBron and Kobe are completely different players. Presence on the court, off the court. LeBron's just not an LA guy. He's just not. He doesn't represent. He might be an LA guy out in the streets, but like, he doesn't represent what the city wants from their icon basketball player. Shit, I mean, Luka might be better just because Luka doesn't do all this public image, like he's there to play basketball. You know what I mean? He's not sitting there trying to intentionally build his brand out at this point. I think if LeBron, because I mean, when you look at the overall record, I mean, it's tough for me because even though I largely was barely alive when Jordan won, I can sit here and be like, you know what, the Unks and Gramps, they still got a lot of ground to stand on, especially as time goes on. I'm like, guess what? I mean, it's not like, I don't know, it's not like they had easy competition either. The Pistons teams were insane that he had lost to twice in the Eastern Conference Finals to try to get through with them. So it's just, all I can say is good job on the damn topic, man. You spoke it very, very well. I don't honestly know if I have a whole lot to add on to this besides my synopsis of what has been said. I will say LeBron, and just in terms of statistically, has been extremely solid for most of that Lakers. You know, let's say all the way up until about 22, 23. He's held on to his statistical averages for the most part every year. You know, it wasn't until the past 2 seasons that you're starting to see a little bit of slip up in the scoring and a little bit more time off just because of injuries and whatnot, especially the past 5 years. That one's been true. But he's still been the same guy, but I think this is the first year where this past season is the first time we've actually been like, LeBron is really just slowing down. Like, this is the end of the ride. And we all knew this coming in, of course, with his age. But I think it was the first true flashpoint to show that he might only have a year or two left. He can keep doing what he's doing, but I'm like, the downfalls now, it ain't coming back up. That's for sure. I'm like, shit, he still might average 18 points, 20 points next season. I'm not saying that's not impossible, but I'm like, how much more does the engine have left on it?
I like what you said about his, you know, the Unks and the Gramps and everything, is that he failed to eliminate the counter-arguments that have been levied against him in terms of the GOAT debate. He had a chance, basketball-wise, to eliminate those arguments, hypothetically eliminate them. And instead he took the business side, the financial side. So now those haters still exist, and they're, only being magnified on social media. Now time may, wither those haters away, and you will see. The discussion is ongoing, but he forewent the decision, or excuse me, he just gave up on that. It seemed like, or he thought that he would be able to accomplish more with the Lakers as opposed to what he ended up accomplishing. The next point I want to make is you could make an argument, and I don't want to diminish championships, but you could make an argument that the most memorable portion, or let's say not ongoing, but the story during his Lakers tenure was him essentially forcing the Lakers' hand to get his son on the team. That, you could make a serious argument that it is the most prominent story of his Lakers tenure, which is nuts, because it was a large discussion about nepotism and skill and his influence on the franchise, and I think a lot of Lakers fans didn't like that, and I thought a lot of the basketball media did not like that, and it was honestly probably pretty hard to defend for a lot of pro-LeBron pundits and podcasters because it was such an overt situation. And then the last thing I want to comment on, and you mentioned this, and this is kind of what I fault John Calipari for at the end of his Kentucky career, but I felt like at the time when LeBron and Rich Paul made this decision, they felt like the Lakers were the best brand vehicle to build LeBron's brand. They viewed the Lakers more of a brand vehicle as opposed to a basketball situation. And I think that is the fundamental issue with LeBron's Lakers tenure, because it was not primarily about basketball.
Yeah, I want to add one more because I agree with that 100%. That decision, the Lakers, was not made on basketball, not purely on basketball. And I'd say most of it was not. Is that one, it just popped in my head once you had started talking. But there is one player that we've already talked about, different sport, that had the same option that LeBron did, and he chose the other one. And that is Tom Brady when he left the Patriots. That man could have gone anywhere to any team. I remember one of the teams in particular was Miami. That's a really good market. That's a great place to end the season up. He could have gone out west to either of the LA teams at that point. But he knew, and because this was very, very, what was everybody talking about after they had made the split? Can Tom Brady win a ring without Bill Belichick? Do they need each other? Basically, because they had played, he had played with Bill Belichick for so long, their careers, their legacies were tied together. I do think that Tom Brady, yes, he won another ring. That one's obvious, but I think the final drive for him at the end portion of his career, he says, I have to win one more to get this conversation to stop. Because everybody will talk about how I've only won these rings because of Bill Belichick. I have to do it on my own in order for me, and maybe that's not his leading reason for, let's say, the Bucks. But I guarantee you that thought process was in the back of his head because we all heard it on all of these sports talk shows amongst friends saying, hey, what do you think he's going to do without Bill? Do you think Bill's still going to be running the Patriots just as well without Tom? That was the lead conversation the entire NFL offseason that year. And Tom Brady picked a team that was very much ready to go to be competitive in a very weak division in the NFC South. And, hey, when you've got all-pro players and potential, Hall of Famers with, like, Mike Evans catching you the ball, and you got Chris Godwin out there, and you bring in Antonio Brown, you get Gronk to unretire. He basically was I'm going to walk in, I'm going to form the super team that's largely there, but bring a couple people along. Not like Aaron Rodgers, who's replacing the Jets with all of his old Packers buddy. He's like, I'm getting the guys that I know are not going to mess around and help me win. I know Antonio Brown was a tough topic point for me to stand my ground on that one, but Antonio Brown for the 1 year was a phenomenal add to their roster. He still has some gas left in the tank. Gronk looked like he had de-aged by 5 years at that point. But Tom Brady went out, and this is exactly what we said. He beat Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. How could you not write that better as Tom Brady's guy who's writing his biography? I'm like, he wins one more without his old coach on a different team against the guy that everybody thinks is going to be the new GOAT. That's the walk off the sunset. Honestly, Tom Brady should have walked off the sunset after that. When he played one more year, he still looked great. Probably still could have played another year or two. But just with one more season, one decision, he did all the things right. He had put any conversation to rest about Joe Montana being number one, of Patrick Mahomes being a better quarterback than him, then Bill Belichick is the reason why he succeeded. He did it all in 1 year, and that's because he decided to make it a football decision and not a business decision. You can make the business decision after you're done. That's what Tom Brady's doing right now. It's all business right now because he's retired. And LeBron did it a step too early because he thought in his head he was done. He's already settled the debate. You don't settle the debate till you walk off the court for the last time, because anything can change after that. That was Russell Wilson with the Hall of Fame conversation. He's probably not going to make it in now. He could have walked off before he went to Denver, and he probably would have made it in, but now he's not. So that's my final point on that topic.
Amen. I agree, and that is why I push back so hard on the Tom Brady Mahomes comparisons. Is, again, he was why, and this is what the Michael Jordan people have, and this is why people put Michael Jordan and Tom Brady in different categories than LeBron, is that these guys are wired different. While LeBron is in his basketball prime at 33 years old, worrying about building his brand and starring in Space Jam 2 and running a sports agency, Tom Brady in his early 40s essentially forced a divorce with his wife to win another Super Bowl and put the GOAT conversation to rest and to get back at his former boss. We're not saying it's healthy, we're not saying it's good, we're not saying it's ethical, but that's what happened. And that's why these guys are the GOAT. That is why they are that. It just is a difference in LeBron as opposed to these guys. And you're right. He made that decision too early. He could have had a podcast, a media company at any time. At any time. Not saying he shouldn't have started one. Not saying he shouldn't have, done Clutch Sports and all of this stuff. It just felt like that was his focus compared to basketball. And that's all. I think that's fine. And he's a billionaire, and it worked. So that's a part of the success. But you know who else is a billionaire? Michael Jordan. So you know who else owned a team? Michael Jordan. Wasn't very good at it. Still owned his team and sold it for a profit for billions of dollars. And now he's actually winning in NASCAR. So the GOATs, they make decisions about, their craft. And LeBron, like you were saying, and like I had said earlier, to wrap this up, he was more concerned about business. And at that point in 2018, he already felt like he was the GOAT. And that's why he probably made that decision, because he had already accomplished what he felt like he needed to basketball-wise, and everything else was gravy. And now, 8 years later, we realize it was not gravy, and the conversation is very much still alive.
Good topic, man. That was a really, really good segment. I'm not trying to pat ourselves on the back, but man, that was good. That was very, very good. All right, we can breathe a little bit. Relax. Let the shoulders get it back down. Got a couple of, I mentioned it last week, a couple just small games. And some of you all have probably seen stuff like this out there before. I just thought it was a good way to, as the NFL season gets a little bit closer, college football's right around the door, believe it or not, just kind of build up some of our NFL diversity and topics, because it's going to explode here soon. We're going to be probably football almost all the time. Whereas when we started this podcast, it was right near the end of the NFL season. Now this will be our first time walking into the season with it. So we have a lot of unconfirmed content coming down the line. So I figured let's just have some fun with this one today. So, Kenton, I have some NFL trivia for you. So the first game that we're going to play, I have 3 different categories for you. The first category, it's basically I'm going to give you a list of 10 players, okay, in their category. And one of them is a fraud. You have to figure out which one is the fraud, okay? So for this first category, and feel free if you want to write them down, you want to type them in. Maybe I can later edit this at some point to actually put pictures on it for the viewers. I'd be more than happy to. But this is NFL all-time passing touchdown leaders. Every single one of these guys have passed for at least 380 touchdowns, except for one. You have to find out which one. Okay, I'm going to give you the list. Going down the order here, okay? This is randomized list. This is not in order, so don't think I just gave up and didn't think about it too much.
380, right? 380.
380. 380 is the minimum. This is career. So, Tom Brady, Dan Marino, Drew Brees, Brett Favre, Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers, Matthew Stafford, and Ben Roethlisberger. That should be 10 on your list.
Okay.
So take me through your thought process here as you work through this list to find the fraud.
TB's got it. Peyton Manning got it. Aaron Rodgers got it. Okay, so, guaranteed for those guys. Now what I'm thinking of is seasons where these dudes had like 45-plus passing touchdowns. I know Stafford has had a 50-touchdown season. I think he's had a couple in his 40s, and he's coming off an MVP year in which he threw 41 touchdowns. He's also played since 2009, I believe. So that lends me to think that Stafford is above 380.
You are correct. You are safe. He's actually 7th on the list with 423 passing touchdowns at this moment.
Another guy that I feel pretty confident in saying he's above 380 is Drew Brees, specifically because of the length of his career.
You are correct. He's actually number 2 on the list with 571 passing touchdowns.
So we have 1, 2, 3. We have Dan Marino and Brett Favre. So this is where it gets tough. And I think I have one picked out. Or to me, okay, it's probably down to 3 guys. I think Dan Marino's got above 380. Is that correct?
You are correct.
Yeah.
Dan Marino is sitting at number 8 with 420.
His second year in the league, I believe he had 47 or 48 touchdowns. They went to the Super Bowl and lost, I think, to the Redskins. So Dan Marino was like early in this like massive touchdown accumulation in the regular season. So I got Favre, who played a long time. Weird stats. I also know that, Rivers played a long time. I'm gonna say Rivers is above 380. Is that correct?
You are correct.
Yeah.
He is number 6 on that list at 425. So who you have left? It's Roethlisberger, Favre, and Eli Manning.
So I think coming down to this 3. Judging by some of these, I think I have the answer, but I understand how this is this could be an argument. So I'm going to pick Eli. I think Eli is below 380. Is that correct?
You are correct.
Okay.
He is 11th on the list at 366. The guy that he took over, or I should say, the guy that is missing in this top 10 list is Matt Ryan with 381. He just eclipsed it. So Ben Roethlisberger is at 9 with 418. Brett Favre is at 5 at 508.
Yeah, Favre, I was pretty confident, but I know he had a lot of seasons. He had seasons where he had like 20 touchdowns, 18, 19, 20 touchdowns, and a bunch of picks. He had a weird career some of those years, but he did have years where he was just like ripping it. And then I know even late in his career, Big Ben had years where he was throwing the ball pretty heavy. He had that year where I believe they ended up losing the Jaguars, but it was like Le'Veon Bell, him and Antonio Brown. I think that was like 2017, maybe 2018, somewhere in there. So, okay, cool. I'm one for one. And I thought when you gave me the list it was Eli, but I kind of wanted to work through it because I wasn't quite sure on Stafford and some of those guys.
No, I think this one, so this is the same category, but this is NFL all-time rushing touchdown leaders. Mm-hmm. Which one of these running backs did not rush for at least 100 touchdowns?
Okay.
Here's the list. We'll give you the obvious one first. We can go Emmitt Smith.
Okay.
Derrick Henry. Jim Brown. Marshall Faulk. Barry Sanders. LaDainian Tomlinson. Adrian Peterson, John Riggins, Marcus Allen, and Walter Payton.
Did not rush for 100 rushing.
Yes.
Was Sean Alexander not available?
Sean Alexander is the gentleman that is missing from this list.
Well, there we go. This is interesting because
I knew you would know that, so I made sure to take him out of this one.
So eliminate AP right off the bat. AP played a long time in the NFL. He lost all his money and was playing at the end of his career for like the Saints and a bunch of like the Cardinals and stuff.
Mm-hmm. He's number 5 on the list with 120 rushing touchdowns.
Okay. Go ahead and eliminate Emmitt Smith. Due
of course,
to the length
number 1.
Yeah.
164.
I'm going to say eliminate LT. He had some monster seasons in the mid-2000s. He had that, 30 touchdown year?
Yep. He's number 2 with 145 touchdowns.
I feel like Derrick Henry's got there now. Is he not?
He is. He's actually number 4, which is wild.
That is
with
wild.
122.
And then give me Marshall Faulk.
He's number 9.
A little later, a little less rushing touchdowns, but still a lot of touchdowns nonetheless. Okay, so now I'm down to Jim Brown, who played in the 50s, Barry Sanders, who had a shortened career due to an early retirement, John Riggins, who was a touchdown merchant for Washington, Marcus Allen, and then Walter Payton. Sweetness. So I'm going to say Walter Payton got over 100 career rushing touchdowns.
Yes, he is at 110, 6th on this list.
And I'm also going to say that, this is tough. I'm going to say John Riggins did get over 100 rushing touchdowns.
He did. He got 104. He's number 8 on this list.
Okay. I figured with his inclusion in the initial list that he would be on there. So I'm down to Jim Brown, Marcus Allen, and Barry Sanders. And this is where it gets tough. I'm going to say Jim Brown, I think, played, 9 years in the NFL. I think Barry Sanders played around 9 years as well. He had some monster years. Barry Sanders wasn't necessarily a goal line back, though. And Marcus Allen, I just don't know enough about Marcus Allen's career is the issue. I know he played for the Raiders. He was a great player. If I had to pick, I would say that...
Go. How about just take one off? Take a guess. Don't just pick one out of the 3. Get you to 50-50.
I'm going to say Barry was on 100 touchdowns.
You are incorrect.
Okay. I was...
Barry was at 99.
See, I felt like working through it. Okay, so my thought process was this. I think I was down to Barry and JB, and I was probably going to pick JB.
You had the right mindset.
Yeah, after this.
Because Marcus Allen's number 3 on the list with 123.
Yeah.
Jim Brown was 7 at 106. I wanted to put Barry Sanders in there because everybody knows he has a shortened career, but that he was a monster. So he's one of those you're like, oh, how many did he get? He had to be close, right? And 99.
See, the issue with this, and this I think is where I messed up on this, is I just didn't know enough about Marcus Allen. I think I had everybody else kind of pegged, but I didn't. I know Marcus Allen won an MVP, won a Super Bowl with the L.A. Raiders, but Heisman Trophy winner. I just did the statistical impact of him. I just was not aware of. So I was kind of picking straws. I know Jim Brown had a short career too, but all right. What's the next one?
So the next list that I have for you, it's just NFL all-time receiving touchdown leaders,
right.
Okay? These receivers, all of them except for one, have scored at least 108 touchdowns. Okay? So, random order. Here we go. We have, and this can include, by the way, tight ends. Okay, they have not been. This will include tight ends. So, Do not forget about them on this list. All right. So we have Mike Evans, Tony Gonzalez, Chris Carter, Randy Moss, Steve Largent, Devontae Adams, Larry Fitzgerald, T.O., Jerry Rice.
T.O. Jerry Rice. Okay.
Do I have 9 or 10 there?
Let me count. I think you have 9. I have Jerry Rice, Mike Evans, Tony Gonzalez, Chris Carter, Randy Moss, Steve Largent, Devontae Adams, Larry Fitz.
Marvin Harrison is the one that I forgot to put on this list. I'll give you a hint. It's not Marvin Harrison.
Yeah, and I didn't think it was. So we're going to go ahead and eliminate him and eliminate Jerry Rice and go ahead and eliminate Randy Moss too.
Those are all very, very safe. All those guys are in the top 5.
Okay. Go ahead and eliminate Tony Gonzalez.
Yep, he is safe.
Okay. And
he's at number 9 with 111.
Then eliminate Larry Fitz due to the length of his career.
He is at number 6 with 121.
So I'm down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. I want to say eliminate Mike Evans because he has been pretty consistent throughout his career.
You are correct. He's actually number 10.
Okay.
At 108.
Chris Carter, Steve Largent, Devontae Adams, and T.O. I'm going to say eliminate Devontae Adams.
You are safe. He is at 7 with 117.
So we're down to Chris Carter, Steve Largent, and T.O. And again, it's like the Marcus Allen thing. I feel like I know how good Steve Largent is, but I just can't picture anything he's done in my mind. You know what? I'm going to say it's Chris Carter. I'm going to pick Chris Carter.
Chris Carter's your fraud? Is that who you're picking?
Yes.
You would be incorrect. He's actually 4th on the list with 130
touchdown machine.
So,
is it Steve?
It is Steve.
Okay.
Steve is tied for 11th. He does have 100 touchdowns. The person that I took off of this list sits at number 8.
Oh, can I guess really quick?
Yes.
It's either Travis Kelce or Gronk.
Incorrect. You have the right position.
Oh, at tight end for touchdowns total. Oh, gosh.
Yeah, there's only 2 tight ends that are in the top 10. And this is one, you know him. He played in our lifetime. He was, I don't know how many more hints I'm going to give you. Let's just say he played basketball to start his
Antonio
sporting
Gates?
career. Yes.
Okay.
Antonio Gates has 116 touchdowns.
That's all right. You know what? With the memory, I get it down to 3, and it's the memory hole one. Now, it's like Chris Carter, T.O.
Yeah, Chris Carter's a sneaky one because I think everybody, whenever they think about the Vikings back then, and all, everybody thinks about Randy Moss.
Yeah.
I feel like Randy Moss overshadows Chris Carter, but Chris Carter had a phenomenal career.
So 1 for 3.
I think you did pretty good, though, man.
I whittled it down a little bit.
You didn't know anything about this coming in. That's pretty good. It's not like you messed up on like the first 2 guesses. I'd be like, come on, man. Like,
yeah, I proved my knowledge. I just didn't get it correct.
And in your defense, I did just pick somebody that was like 11th on each one of those.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, they're up there. I know that, but
yeah, it wasn't as obvious as some people might think, I guess.
My last game. We'll see if you like this one.
Okay.
It's called NFL Deal or No Deal.
Deal or no deal. Let's do it.
This is for, let's say, a fantasy football team here, okay? So your first set of cases, all right? If you've ever seen the show, you know, you pick so many cases, and then it gets towards where they offer you the money, and it's like you can keep your case or take the money. So in this scenario, basically, you have 1 through 6. I'm going to say, hey, this is for your quarterback position. You pick a number. We'll open the case up. You get to see what it is. Who is your quarterback for your fantasy football team or your franchise, however you want to think about it. And if you like it, you can keep it. If you don't like it, you can trade it in with any other case, but you can't trade it again. So you basically keep it or swap it. And then we'll keep moving on. All right, any questions?
No, I think I got it.
All right, so with your quarterback position, you have cases 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. You got a special number that you want?
Let's go 3, right down the middle.
All right, you open case number 3, which holds Brock Purdy. Do you want to keep him, or do you want to trade in a case?
I want to trade in a case.
What is your new number? Anything but 3.
5.
5. Well, you picked the best damn case you probably could have, and that's Josh Allen. So good trade there. So you arguably have quarterback number 1 on your team for a fantasy perspective.
Okay.
All right, going to our first slot at running back. Okay, cases 1 through 6. Go ahead and pick a number.
Let's go numero uno.
Numero uno. Okay, you have Bijan Robinson. Do you want to keep it or swap it?
I'm going to keep it.
Let me do this real quick before I get too far. So in terms of who you missed out on your quarterback cases, you opened up Brock Purdy at 3, and you traded in for number 5 at Josh Allen. Case number 1 was Justin Herbert. Case number 2 is Malik Willis. Case number 4, Jaden Daniels. And case number 6, Kyler Murray. So you definitely got the best possible option just from this list here. I'm not hating on Justin Herbert or anything like that. So you kept your running back. Number 1 was Bijan Robinson. Fair. Number 2 case was Derrick Henry. Number 3 case, Cam Scadwell. Number 4, Tony Pollard. Number 5, Kyle Monangai. Number 6 was Alvin Kamara. This is current, not like prime Alvin Kamara, by the way. Okay. This is for your second running back slot. Pick a case, 1 through 6.
I'm going to go 4.
4. You have opened up the case for Travis Etienne or Etienne, however you want to pronounce it. Do you want to keep or do you want to trade?
Ooh. And he's in New Orleans.
He's in New Orleans. This is not Jacksonville. This is his current team. Yep.
I'm going to trade.
Pick a number.
6.
Well, you get a Jacksonville running back. You get Bishal Tootin.
Oh, man. It's all right. We're tooting. We're going all in on tooting this year anyway. So
here's what you missed out on.
Okay.
Case number 1, you had Aaron Jones Sr.
All right.
At number 2, you had Chuba Hubbard. At 3, you had Jahmyr Gibbs. And at 5, you had Kyron Williams.
Okay, so Gibbs was the one.
Yes.
And then, I mean, Etienne, we'll see. But probably like the second or third best guy on this list.
I was going to say, every one of these case selections, I'm not giving you all bums. You definitely got a guy that's top of the position group on this. So they're there. They're out there. It's just, do you want to play your odds?
You know what? I'll take Tootin. I feel like that's. I mean, obviously I have to, but like I think that's fine. I think that's fine.
He's RB2.
Yeah.
You're fine. You're fine. All right, we'll get into the wide receiver. 1 through 6. What case would you like?
Let's go 2.
2. Well, you have opened up Jamar Chase. Would you like to keep him or trade him?
You know, I think I would like to keep him.
Are you sure? So I'm going to tell you what you missed out on, all these wonderful prizes. Number 1, you have the Go-Go Speed Racer with Rashee Rice. At number 3, you have Terry McLaurin. At 4, you have A.J. Brown. At 5, DJ Moore. And 6, your favorite player of all time, Brian Thomas Jr.
I think it worked out.
I think it did. I think you got lucky. All right, opening the second case is up for wide receivers. 1 through 6. Which case are you opening up?
I'm going to go back to 1.
You have opened up Zay Flowers. Would you like to keep or trade?
Sorry, Zay Flowers, if you watch that. I'm sorry.
Zay
I did that,
Flowers. I was going to say, that's very negative.
Sorry,
You were
Zay.
very disappointed.
Let's go 5.
5. What are these pools, man? You just opened up Puka Nakua.
Oh, my gosh. Okay. And by the way, Logan did not tell me any of these beforehand. I'm
No,
just on a
I
heater.
made these like 20 minutes before the show started broadcasting.
I'm
I just
just
threw
on a
some
heater.
names, randomized it. Wow. All right. You got your tight end position. Okay. 1 through 6. Who are you taking?
And I just want to preface this, everyone, by saying in fantasy, generally, this is always my weakest position. I am horrible at choosing tight ends. I'm going to say number 2.
Number 2, you have opened up rookie Kenyon Sadiq for the Jets. Would you like to keep or
Kenyon
trade?
Sadiq. And honestly, Kenyon Sadiq, this has nothing to do with you, bro. I like dead ass. It has nothing to do with you. This has everything to do with the Jets. So this is not a Kenyon Sadiq problem. But I'm going to go ahead and trade that in.
What number would you like, sir?
Let's go into the line, 6.
You have opened up current day Travis Kelce.
Okay.
Not bad.
Not bad. It's fine. It's like 4 touchdowns and 600 yards, maybe.
All right, here's what you missed out on. Case number 1 was Trey McBride.
Oh, man.
Case number 3 was Pat Freiermuth. Case number 4 is your boy, Tyler Warren.
Okay, yeah.
Case number 5 is Jake Ferguson.
Oh, man. So Warren would have been nice. Warren would have been really nice. I mean, I think, Kenyon Sadiq, it's always hard to say with these first-round tight ends, but I think the Jets are just not a team I'm comfortable rolling with.
Do you not like Geno Smith as your quarterback, dude?
I can't say I do, and I liked him more last year. I'll say that. So I didn't.
All right, I have.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I was like, should have done more research, and like Chip Kelly was the play caller, and old Pete Carroll, and I'm like, yeah, Geno, the Raiders, they're actually gonna be better than people think. Yeah. Okay.
Last position. I skipped that on kickers.
Oh, fuck.
I'll do it next time. My bad. It's just defense. Defense is a unit, not any position group. 1 through 6.
I'm gonna go number 3.
You have your team's defense, the Colts. Do you want to keep it or trade it?
I want to trade it in for number 4.
Number 4. Oh, even better. You got my team's defense, the Titans.
Great.
Yeah, great. Wonderful. Awesome. I
Defensive
downgraded.
coach, I guess. I can talk myself into that.
All right, here's what you missed out on. Case number 1, the Dolphins. Case number 2, the Texans. Case number 5, the Broncos. Case number 6, the Patriots.
Texans would have been.
Yes,
Would have been
Texans
nice.
would have
That
been
would have been
very, very nice.
But I essentially have drafted, 1, 2, 3 first rounders in this.
That's pretty good. I mean, no, honestly, 4. Josh Allen,
I
Bijan,
guess,
Jamar
yeah, you
Chase,
could.
Puka. So I'd say overall, you did pretty damn good. I was hoping you'd struggle way more with this one, but you just
I don't know
knew
why
the numbers.
I don't know why. I don't know what rationale I had with the picking numbers. It's just I don't know.
Because you picked basically a different number almost every time.
I think 1 before the defense selection was the only repeat that I had, so it works out. And
Yeah.
shout out to Tootin.
Yeah, shout out to Tootin. I hope you get the job, man. You're better than Chris Rodriguez, that's for sure. Sorry, Chris
God.
Rodriguez, it's true.
Yeah. I hope so.
Well, that is the end of kind of the little trivia and games that I had put together there. We'll definitely keep messing around with different stuff. I know we talked about it in the past. Definitely mess around with some more stuff. Should be a little bit more open this weekend in terms of time to get that set up for upcoming episodes. Now, I know you wanted to talk about this a little bit. I was, of course, a little busy yesterday. I completely missed the third place game for the World Cup. Wouldn't say that either one of us are avid soccer fans, but you took some time and you watched the game, and you were telling me before that was pretty good. So, share with the audience, share with me, what's your thoughts on the third place game, how it went?
Yeah, so really quick, we are honestly, for people who are going to watch this on Sunday or Monday, Spain ended up winning the World Cup, defeating Argentina 1-0. Congratulations to Spain, España, for their second World Cup victory. That is pretty cool. They had a really good team, so shout out to them for a well-deserved win. Argentina, their magic finally ran out at the end. Lionel Messi, we probably won't see him anymore on the international stage, but it was a great final act for him to conclude his career. Only ends up with one World Cup, but he did play in 3 finals, which is pretty great. So I want to talk about this England game and how just absolutely wild it was. So I think a lot of people thought that France would have been the ones to play in the final coming out of, I'll say, the top bracket. Okay, so one side of the bracket was like France versus Spain, and the other side was England versus Argentina. So France, even though Spain was, just as good, obviously they won. I think a lot of people were thinking France was going to win because of Kylian Mbappe and their deep lineup. So they don't win. France, won the 2018 World Cup, and they're one of the most talented teams in the world. So England plays Argentina. They go up 1-0. This is the semis, by the way. They go 1-0 in, I think, around the 70th minute. Anthony Gordon scores a goal, and then England's manager subs out 3 offensive players to put in defensive players and just kind of hold the ball and make sure that Argentina does not score. Well, that did not happen. Argentina went ahead and scored, and they were double teaming Messi, and Messi just made a bunch of crazy passes, and Argentina ended up winning, and England choked, even though I thought England, for the vast majority of the game, looked like the better team, the more talented team. England, they disappointed, and there were a lot of people in the English soccer community and the commentary space were panning the manager for making poor substitution choices and tactical choices, etc. So what that set up was what I'm about to talk about, which is one of the honestly craziest sports games I've ever seen. Not just soccer, literally any sport ever in a major tournament. And it's crazy high profile. I know Spain is one of the best teams in the world, and Argentina has Lionel Messi and everything like that. But could even from a casual or not even soccer fan perspective, the magnitude of an England versus France World Cup final in the United States would have been nuts. I mean, actually crazy nuts. Because I know, as far as any other national team goes, if you live in the United States, the team you probably know the international team you probably know the most about is England, I would say, because of the Premier League and how popular it is in America and all the stars like Bellingham, even though I know he doesn't play in the Premier League, but all these guys, people know some of the top tier English football players. And then, of course, Mbappe is a big star. They won the World Cup in 2018. France, this is a heavyweight matchup. You're going to go back to, wars and stuff that France and England have fought in the past. And this is a marquee game. But it's a third-place game, too. It's does this mean anything? No. It's all for pride and joy and bragging rights. And so I'm up in Cincinnati watching this game, and England just starts spanking France in the first half. I think they went up 4-0. I mean, they were literally dominating them. I was kind of shocked because I was like, how is France getting ran off the field right now? It didn't quite make any sense because of how talented France was. Second half starts. England starts to implode. France scores a goal early in the second half. And then slowly but surely over the next 25 minutes, they start to whittle the lead away. They score 2 goals over that span. And so it's 4-3. 4-3, which is pretty nuts considering how hard it is to score in soccer. So I'm thinking at this point in time, oh my God, is England about to literally have one of the most high-profile chokes ever? Like, you have I'm trying to think of, like, going up 4-0 and half. Like, honestly, it's probably like being up, like, 35-3 in football and, like, choking that. Like, I want to say 28-3. I would say it's probably more like 35. I mean, this is like a massive lead. And so France storms all the way back. And then eventually England gets a penalty kick, the one-on-one, they score. Then France scores again. It's 5-4. And I'm thinking, and so are a lot of England fans probably are thinking, like, oh my God, like, just end this game. Like, we're going to choke. We choked against Argentina. The world's out to get us. And then they score this goal at the end, Jude Bellingham, and they end up winning 6-4. 10 goals scored in the game. Incredible game. High-profile game. Kylian Mbappe became the highest goal scorer in the history of the World Cup. He's only like 27 or 28 years old. And obviously it's England versus France. And I really don't have too much to say besides that England avoided national embarrassment, first off. And then, second off, it was just an incredibly fun game because they were scoring, because of the players involved and also that the high amount of scoring. So, in conclusion, congratulations, England. Congrats to the lads for beating France. And then also, shout out to Spain for the win, and shout out to Lionel Messi. Good World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, sounds like, even though I didn't watch a whole lot, I've seen bits and pieces there. Especially, I didn't really get to watch, obviously, today's game or yesterday's. But it seems like it's been a really fun World Cup, especially to soccer enjoyers. And the fact that it's been in the North America, but mostly the U.S., has put it on a higher pedestal than it usually would be, I feel like, for our country. Which is, it seems like everything went extremely well. And just in terms of, good soccer being played, the venues being, pretty well, it seemed like it was a good thing for, let's just say, foreigners to come into our country and actually get to see the country instead of just reading about it. And it seemed like the majority of them had positive experiences, which is always great. And then, some exciting scoring. And then Spain, second time, with their World Cup. Congratulations to their team and everybody in their country. I would much rather the Spanish win than the English or the French, so I'm ecstatic with that on 250. I'm fine with that. But no, this was a really just a good event. I think the World Cup has at least allowed some people to kind of reset maybe some perspectives on other people as well. So, yeah. No complaints. Seemed like everything went well from start to finish for the most part.
Yeah, it was great. It was a really fun event. I had a lot of enjoyment watching it. I've honestly gotten more into it, soccer, than I initially thought I would, and it was just a lot of fun. And it's cool to see everybody kind of rally around America in a way that is not through it seemed. I'm sure there was like some propaganda online, don't get me wrong, but like seemed to be largely organic, like people coming over here and like enjoying watching sports, because I know American sports culture is really corporate. Honestly, it is not the same as English, football culture or some of these other countries, but it is uniquely American and it is a lot of fun. And what I think a lot of people around the world didn't realize is how like hyper optimized a lot of American, like how hyper optimized American sports culture is. Yeah, there's things that don't quite make sense, but it is all oriented around like getting you hammered, eating like wings, going to the stadium, even if it is a little expensive. I grant you, it is expensive to go to these games, especially the World Cup. But like NFL games are expensive. It's still a really good time. And honestly, you can have just as much fun, and I think a lot of people realize this, outside the stadium, watching the game in a bar or with your friends or whatever, than in the stadium, which is a whole nother shebang to itself. And also, I know I had this rant a couple weeks ago, but the stadium thing, I hope everybody realizes now that we stadium mog everybody, and we are literally built to host these events. There's a reason, besides just probably political corruption, that America got the Olympics and the World Cup in 2026 and now 2028. And also, Mexico and Canada too. And I think they did a great job hosting as well, Mexico especially. So, in conclusion, it's been fun. I'm sure, we were recording. I didn't get to see Trump hand out the trophy to, whatever Spanish player or manager or whoever was there. I'm sure he made it pretty funny, but the World Cup was a good time, and now we're ready for some actual football, and that's what I'm excited for.
Yes, 100%. It's coming back. It's time.
It's coming home.
But no, I think unless you wanted to add anything else on, that is the end of this episode. We're past 25 episodes now. I don't know if you know that, but
wow,
quarter. Yeah. So we've been doing this for half a year. That's for sure, at least.
And we're just getting started, everyone.
Mm-hmm. But no, thank you everybody for your time, for listening, comment, like, subscribe, share. We appreciate everything. We're just talking sports and we enjoy it. We'll keep working on our content and putting together some different stuff for you. But hey, got anything else for us, Kenton?
Nope. Just make sure, like, subscribe, tell your friends in real life and also on the internet, and make sure to give us some thumbs up. We will see you all next week.
Peace, everybody.
Peace.